I'm Thomas Harvey, civil rights attorney in the Los Angeles area. Been representing students and faculty in protest-related cases in California for about a year now.
And Thomas, we're here on the campus of the University of California, Los Angeles, and there were some serious incidents that took place here, attacks on students and others, staff, workers who were in an encampment. What happened here?
Well, just last year, the anniversary was April 30th, and then May 1st and 2nd, we saw on 2 consecutive nights a raid, a mob attack on the Palestine Solidarity Encampment at UCLA, where for more than 4 hours, hundreds of self-proclaimed Zionists and some white supremacists attacked relentlessly a group of peaceful protesters who were out to try to encourage this university, to demand this university, in fact, divest from companies that profit from genocide in Palestine. And that attack went on for hours while UCLA's private security, while UCLA's police stood nearby and did nothing. People were beaten with metal pipes, they had their hands broken, they were maced, they were bear maced, they had incendiary devices thrown at them. This is while this was being broadcast on live TV. Not a single person was arrested that night while that happened. Compare that to the night after, 2 nights later, May 1 to May 2, when UCLA decided that the violence was a result of the encampment members, which is objectively untrue. They decided to close the encampment, and then they called in LAPD, California Highway Patrol, and UCPD, and they, for hours, attacked the same students and violently tore down this encampment, this peaceful pro-Palestinian anti-genocide encampment. They shot people at close range with projectiles. People had to go to the hospital. They had their sternums fractured. They had fingers that they lost. The violence in this area by the police and UCLA was devastating, and far disproportionate to any of the protests, the peaceful protests that was going on this campus for a week.
And the people behind this violent attack, they were Zionists. A lot of them were photographed, videotaped by CNN. It seems that they had a lot of money. They were broadcasting, blasting. What kind of efforts went into their organization to attack this encampment?
A lot of money, a lot of organization. It's unclear exactly who was paying for this, but we do know that someone paid for a Jumbotron to be put on UCLA's campus.
And who allowed the Jumbotron on the campus?
UCLA allowed it. I don't believe that they permitted it officially, but they were aware of it and did not remove it.
It's against the rules, isn't it, to have a Jumbotron?
It's against their own rules to have anything like that on campus and to display sound like that. So there was a lot of money involved, and these are not your typical kind of Proud Boy protesters. These are folks who are real estate agents. They are, some of them are prominent business people. Our investigation has shown that these are folks with a fair amount of money and some standing in the local Los Angeles community. It makes it even more outrageous that they were, 1, there in any case, 2, allowed to, on video, as you said, beat people for hours, 3, not be arrested. 4, a year later, not only 3 people were ever arrested out of that group of people, whereas they arrested 200 people from the encampment the night they shut it down.
And there are many billionaires here in Los Angeles, Zionist supporters, who are contributing to maybe this event, and also the UC system. And what role do they have in the system? Because it seems there's a connection with what's going on with these attacks.
Our lawsuit doesn't touch on that, but I think it's safe to speculate that donors to UCLA played a significant role in the way UCLA responded to the encampment and the violence. I would imagine as we get into discovery, we're going to find out a lot of information about who was in contact with UCLA, who pushed them, who threatened to remove money. At this stage, we don't know that. We're very early in the case, but it is something that we're trying to figure out. Was this purely the UCLA system? Was this outside actors who encouraged this behavior? What role did they play, and how can we hold those folks accountable too?
And Governor Newsom was involved. I understand they had highway patrol. I mean, it seems like there are millions of dollars that have been going into the militarization of the campuses?
Oh, yes. I mean, across the UC campuses, I don't know what the actual dollar amount is, but I know that just at one, there were tens of millions of dollars spent. I would be shocked if we didn't find out that there's something more like $30 million spent over the course of the encampments and the pro-Palestine anti-genocide movement here at UCLA. And it's an overwhelming show of force. If you think about the University of California, Irvine, they called for mutual aid with 22 separate police departments. I'll tell you as an aside, I went to UCI as a graduate student, and I would have sworn in a court that there were no police at UCI when I was there. But when people wanted to, this is an illustration of the Palestine exception, when people want to protest against the genocide in Palestine, then you've got 22 interlocking police departments that respond to clear an encampment on May 15th of this last year.
And what was the response of the regents? Did they support this attack on the students?
The regents, generally speaking, support this. There's a famous incident of Jay Shuris, who had a large caliber bullet on his desk, as he said in response to a question of how to address faculty members who had protested the university system's investment in genocide. He said all options are on the table, as there was this large caliber bullet sitting on his table while he said those words.
And there are students, American students, who go to Israel, join the IDF, are involved in the genocide, and then come back here. What's going on with that? I mean, it seems they're working for another government in committing these acts, and then they come back to the United States.
I don't know much about that, but I can tell you that one of the attackers, one of the most prominent attackers, Eden Own, has apparently left the United States to join the Israeli offensive force. He has posted video of himself in uniform and at an induction ceremony in Israel, and we think there are at least one other person who we identified in the attacks who's left the United States to go to Israel to join the army.
And there were dozens of people photographed, their pictures, their faces, and yet you say only 3 people have been arrested?
My understanding is only 3 were arrested and only 1 was charged, and that's Eden Own, who has left the country. So it's unclear to me what the value is of a charge against him at this point. It seems purely symbolic, and there were not very many people arrested. There were very few people ever charged with any crime, if any, other than those 3.
And if hundreds of thousands, maybe millions of dollars were spent on organizing this attack, this violent attack, wouldn't that be a RICO? Wouldn't that be a criminal conspiracy? Because you're actually conspiring to physically assault somebody?
It is potentially a conspiracy. It's not a claim that we brought in the case. It is something that we are trying to look into.
If there had been Palestinian supporters doing that.
Well, across the country, we see that lawsuit, that exact lawsuit being brought against SJP chapters and other Palestinian supporters. In this case, we made the decision to go into state court, so that option isn't available. But the similar, just sort of civil conspiracy is on the table, and we are looking into, again, the relationship and the coordination among all the people that participated.
And this is a democratic city. The police were involved, a democratic state. It seems like the politicians were part of this collusion in attacking.
It's very clear they were. This is, as you said, this is a democratic city with a would-be liberal mayor, under a democratic governor. This all happened under a would-be liberal president, and the protesters were demonized from the very beginning, called anti-Semitic. There were questions about association with terrorism and a variety of preposterous, just ridiculous, baseless claims made by officials. I think it is worth noting that this group of people laid the groundwork for the Trump administration to further it and really veer us into an overt and explicit kind of fascism that we're dealing with right now, weaponizing anti-Semitism as a tool to really reproduce a kind of Red Scare, House on Un-American Activities Committee environment among faculty and students and people in this community.
And this idea that they're propagating, which apparently they want to put into law, that if you criticize Israel, that makes you an anti-Semite. What is that all about?
It's an extremely dangerous precedent. I think what many of the faculty here and the students here are protesting about is the right to be able to talk about criticisms of Israel's foreign policy, criticism of Zionism as a settler colonial, racist, apartheid-like policy and approach to governing Israel. It's not a criticism of Israel as an entity in itself in a vacuum, but rather the policies that I think this group and these folks want to be able to preserve. We're veering ever closer to a place where you could come out in these streets and criticize the United States government, France, anyone we wanted to, but if you dare say a word about Israel, you will be alleged to have been an anti-Semite under some of the proposed bills in the state and this country.
And the UC system, UCLA, UCSF, they're facing billions of dollars of cuts to the NIH. They're threatened layoffs, faculty, their workers here, up to ECWA, AFSCME are fighting for living wages in the case of AFSCME. Yet it seems like there's unlimited money, billions and trillions for war.
It's always the case that there's money for war and there's money for cops. If you look at some of the Public Record Act requests that we've gotten, excuse me, the responses on Public Record Act requests, you see hundreds of thousands of dollars in invoices from the California Highway Patrol to UCLA. You see tens of thousands of dollars from consultants to talk about how to police. But then when it comes down to how many scholarships you can provide poor people and people of color in this state, or how many faculty members you can hire, there's no money. They're told there's no money. But if we were today to go out and have a protest on the same quad where they had their encampment last year, the police would come out in force and they would just send a bill to Jay Shores and Michael Drake, and it wouldn't be a problem. They'd pay it.
And this idea of private security guards, how many private security guards are there?
I don't know how many. I know there was an overwhelming number during the encampment. I don't know if they are continuing.
But they didn't stop the attack on the encampment.
They did not stop the attack. They did nothing to mitigate it. They interfered in no way. We have reports of our clients being beaten with private security 10 feet away from them, watching them. Our clients went and asked for safe passage into a building during the attack and were denied by the security. They did absolutely nothing to protect the students on this campus.
And the students, are they still suffering from trauma and the kind of attack that was made?
Of course, it's devastating. Several students have had to suspend their studies, if not end their studies, especially around the anniversary. I think for many of these students, it's the first really sort of dark day anniversary that they have experienced in their lives, and it's been devastating to them. All of them are the kind of, everyone I've met, everyone I work with is quick to point out that what happened to them pales in comparison to what's going on in Palestine every day. It doesn't erase the fact that for these people who were beaten, had their hands broken, were maced, they were attacked on a campus that they once felt safe on, and that happened to them because they dared to speak up against the genocide and their university profiting from it. It's not going to be lost on them. I think it's going to last a lifetime.
And what can people do who want to support your efforts?
We have a website, peoplevucla.com. People can go there. They can make donations. That donation will go to supporting the legal efforts and supporting some of the students. We're not a law firm. We're not a big group of people. It's mostly small law firms, small law practices, myself included. And we are really trying to fund this case on our own. We're doing okay right now, but we're going to need it for the long haul if we're able to effectively prosecute the case against UCLA.
And there are cases around the country. What else is going on nationally?
Everywhere you look, there's a case brought by either by some sort of the Brandeis Center, Stand With Us Legal Center. There are these groups that are following the playbook of, it's called Project Esther. A lot of people have heard of Project 2025, but there's another group, another project put up by the same people called Project Esther, which it just lays out how to attack and destroy the Palestine Solidarity Movement. And one of their attacks is on all of the SJP chapters, on the FJP chapters, on the various other pro-Palestine groups, and that Palestine Youth Movement, for example, and then to get at the fiscal sponsors and the people who work at those nonprofits, as well as the lawyers that help them out and the people who support them. So I think educating ourselves about that is really important, and asking that calling out to the courts to not allow for this type of thing to happen, calling our elected officials to try to get them to dissuade these people from doing this. We're going to be fighting these battles for years to come.
And there's also something called the Canary Project, apparently, which has been targeting students, faculty, basically a hit organization to target people and get universities and companies to retaliate against these people.
Yeah, I think we've seen this. We've seen this since October 2023. We've seen this because Canary Mission, Batar, accuracy, so-called accuracy in media, they put up doxing trucks. They do
What are doxing trucks? What are they?
It's a large truck that they put on campus here. It's like a billboard truck, essentially. They'll have a student's name and their picture and a website that said UCLA's leading antisemite.com, and we'll have someone's name. And they raise money off this. They terrify these students. These students will get, they reveal where they live, what their phone number is, what their email is. Students, faculty, community members alike. It's been going on. I think the most dangerous aspect of this we've seen is Batar is working in coordination with the United States government to identify people who are on visas or on other immigration status. They identify pro-Palestinian protesters who are on a visa, and then the U.S. government seeks to have them not deported but kidnapped and put into an El Salvadorian prison in most cases.
So you're saying that this privately funded organization, probably supported by Zionists, maybe the Israeli government is actually involved in targeting it for the FBI and for these raids?
That's exactly right. I don't know who their funding is. It's another thing that we're trying to figure out. But the effect is they tweet, they send information, they go public with this. In fact, just today, the court in one of these cases, one of these kidnapping cases, pointed out the sequence where Batar said something publicly about a person, and the next day Homeland Security had them kidnapped off the street and removed, and they tried to send them outside of the country to a prison.
Are you worried about these fascists who are in the government now actually carrying out basic attacks on democratic rights and these kidnappings and threatening any kind of democratic right in this country?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's a terrifying time we live in. I think the Trump administration so far has made their motivation more naked and plain, and the rhetoric is more violent and racist and xenophobic. But the truth is that this is the history of our country. This is an amplified version of it. But you have to go back to President Obama, who was called the deporter-in-chief. He created the infrastructure that the Trump administration is using now. Each subsequent president had a chance to dismantle that infrastructure and did not. The executive authority that Trump is playing on, although he is going further than they did, is something that's been the unitary executive, something that they tried to establish in the Bush administration after the war on terror. The reason it's been so hard for people to challenge their detention is in part because the entire legal structure that we created to make it impossible for people to get justice in this country if we think they are bad people. That has happened to black people and poor people in this country forever. We saw an amplification of it after the war on terror. What we're seeing now is the logical outgrowth of that to what we see the Trump administration is. I'm glad people are seeing it and hearing it for what it is. I'm scared. I think we're going to be able to win and push that back. I'm scared that we're going to win is what people are going to call a return to normal, which would be a kinder, gentler, nicer version of what he's doing right now.
And during the 50s, when there was another witch hunt, McCarthy period, Roy Cohn, who Trump learned from, the ADL, the Zionist B'nai B'rith, actually colluded with the House Un-American Activities Committee right here in Los Angeles to target leftist communists in that witch hunt? Is there any similarity?
Oh, I think it's very similar. I think they have a different focus of attack in terms of going after universities and going after law firms. But it wouldn't shock me at all if there was some sort of national security related executive order about propaganda made for the United States that affects Hollywood. And then we're going to see the exact same thing. The one thing that we've seen is that most people who have these sort of middle class to upper middle class jobs and rich people, they're not exactly courageous. So it's always going to be the people who have the most to lose who are going to be leading these fights. It's going to be the people who are at greatest risk who are going to have the most courage. It's been that way ever since I've been a lawyer. That's who leads these things, and we get other people to come along. And that's what all of us should be trying to do, is support them so that when it comes to some of these more powerful people, they've got a little bit of an example of how people can really be courageous.